Okay, I believe we're live. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. If you didn't already know, I'm here with author Emily Dabb to talk about reading, writing, publishing, more fantasy fandom, all that stuff. Hi, Emily.
Hey, Samuel.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for coming on with all the technical difficulties and schedule changes and stuff. We still made it happen, so I'm glad for that. Emily's a fantasy author. She's written a fantasy adventure novel called Errant, A Legend of the Gallant Knight. And I'll let her tell you more about that in just a minute. And as always, I'm grateful that she's come on and agreed to be with us here today to answer some of our questions. So I do have some questions prepared as always, but I also want to make this an interactive discussion. So if you're watching today, wherever you're tuning in from, if you're a fan, a reader, an aspiring author, a fantasy aficionado, whatever, post your questions in the chat about reading, writing, publishing, all the above, and Emily's work, and we want to hear from you too. Okay, so it should be a good time. So Emily, for those who aren't familiar, can you give us just a quick overview of your book and or any other major writing work that you've done?
For sure, yeah. So Errant is a medieval fantasy. It's an adventure, um, and it focuses on the knight as the main character, and he goes on um, several quests, but there's one main quest throughout the book, and um, it's full of sword fights and long journeys and horseback riding and all the fun stuff that you think of when you think
Oh yeah,
medieval knighthood.
who doesn't
um
love medieval fantasy? I mean, I do.
yeah, right. Yeah, so it focuses on him and his journey, and uh kind of asks the questions, how do you deal with bitterness, being someone who is supposed to be this noble character. So there's there's many questions throughout the book, but that's kind of the main thrust. He has a specific relationship in the book that challenges him.
Sure.
So yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
It's the hero's journey, and we're all on different hero's journeys, but I mean, every hero has struggles to overcome, right?
exactly. Yep. Hmm.
Cool. You said it's a fantasy. I wonder, is it just like medieval, or are there like magical elements in your world? And can you tell us a little bit about what makes it fantasy?
Yeah, so it tends to be more of a realistic fantasy. So there's not necessarily um, the creative magical elements that you might find in like uh, oh, what's a modern example, like Aragon, or
Yeah.
a maybe a better example would be, Tolkien has created this entire, lore behind his world, and he's got magical elements. So there's not necessarily that level of magic. It's more fantastic spiritual elements. There's a lot of like spiritualism and um, yeah, but more realistic. So you're gonna find like some confrontations with like dark forces
Okay.
and um yeah, so that kind of stuff.
Okay. Didn't know. Is it like set in real history, like medieval times, kind of?
No, so the setting is kind of feels like historical fiction, but it is a completely different world. It's an imaginary world.
That makes it fantasy. So cool.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sounds fun. I know that. I mean, obviously, it's a huge audience for that. I deal with a lot on here. I deal with a lot of fantasy and sci-fi speculative people, and
Hmm.
I mean, I love Tolkien too. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
So.
Who doesn't?
Donna asked a question in the chat. She said, Emily, since you come from a long line of oral storytellers, what made you decide to put pen to paper, so to speak?
Actually, oral storytelling played a huge part in my decision to decide to write, because um, it started when I was young. I would tell the stories to my sisters as
Mhm.
we were going to sleep or whatever. We did a lot of reading aloud. We listened to our grandparents tell stories. We listened to our parents tell stories, and um, so stories were a huge part of our family life. And then I had the practice of and the initiation into doing it myself, and but not with like telling family history, but with creating and inventing random stories. The Gallant Knight is one of those stories actually that started back then. So
From when you were young?
yes.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
Telling a bedtime story to my sisters. That's where it initiated. Yep.
That's cool. Hey, that's also like Tolkien. He started writing, I think, The Hobbit. I mean, for his kids, but
Yep.
that's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool when you have and you have an idea that you've had since your childhood, and you're like, I can flesh this out and make something out of it still.
Yes. And it just slowly transforms as you grow.
Okay. Yeah. And at some point you decided to write it down and
Yep.
put it into writing as well. So
Yep.
when or how did you get into writing?
So that also I got into pretty young. My mom encouraged me to write. I started writing like short stories or short snippets of scenes for classes and things like that. And I actually started writing essays the most. I wasn't a huge fiction writer until until I started Errant, which for people who know me, it took me a long time to actually complete that book. So so Errant was the first major fiction work that I actually started on and completed. There were some westerns in between there because I love cowboy stories. So, but
hey, there's still time in the future.
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. And so you're a writer. I mean, I didn't realize this, but I mentioned you had some experience with oral storytelling, and you're an illustrator too, is what I'm hearing from your website. What kind of art do you do?
So I tend to focus on in my own character drawing. I do a lot of people and faces, and I love drawing animals as well, but usually people is what I focus on.
There's a horse picture behind you. Is that one of yours?
This is Galacticus from the story Errant.
Awesome. Okay.
He's one of the main characters.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, it looks good. I mean, I'm not an art critic, but it looks good to me.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
If anyone is catching the podcast later and only hearing the audio, you might want to come to Facebook or find the video version because you can see the art. But yeah, it's cool. Did you do the art for Errant then?
No, so the cover was actually done by the independent publisher that I hired to put the book together. I gave them like the specifics for what I wanted on the cover, the color scheme, the style, the even the position of the the knight on the front. But they put it together for me, and it was a nice assist at the time. I was anxious to get it out and didn't feel like I had the focus to create the picture that I wanted. So
you allowed to do both. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, are there pictures inside the book, or is it just novel?
Nope. It's just a novel. There's no pictures or illustrations yet. Maybe
in
a later version.
Okay. Hey, one thing at a time. That's cool. Yeah. It's good to have multiple interests, but also ones that can intersect and work together when maybe sometime in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. How did you get interested in writing fantasy? Like, I'm wondering, like, what are your favorite fantasy books, movies, anything?
Yeah, so I've got quite a list of ones that I like, ones that I feel like drew me into telling fantasy stories. But I was talking with my sister just a little bit ago. You actually kind of grow past some of those early favorites to where you look back and you realize, oh, well, this was good for, pulling me in, but it's not necessarily one that I would go, it's not a go-to now.
Yeah.
But
you mentioned Aragon. Is that like still one of your favorites or no?
No, that was never a favorite. That was what came to mind as I was like brainstorming what are fantasy books that I have. There are actually not very many young adult or adult fantasies, and maybe I just haven't broadened my scope yet to read enough of them. Actually, the Realm Makers group has been excellent because I didn't realize there was such a volume of Christian fantasy writers. That's been wonderful. I was just kind of stuck with whatever was coming out.
Aragon came to mind for me when you said like it's kind of it's maybe a favorite when you're younger, because I read it in ninth grade and I was like, this is awesome, this is the best thing ever. And then when I got older, I'm like, this is just like, I mean, it's entertaining, but it's not original. And it was written by a teenager, and it was good for what a teenager could do, but it's
Yeah.
not the greatest thing ever. Anyway, go ahead.
I mean, yeah, so for me, a series like that would have been the Song of the Lioness series by Tamora Pierce.
Yeah, I know the author's name.
Yes, so she's written lots of fantasy, and there was children. It was middle grade, young adult series that probably should be geared toward older teenagers because of the content. But I read it as a fairly young reader, and the main storyline what just like took a hold of my imagination. It's a girl, she wants to become a knight. She goes into hiding or like disguises herself to become a knight. There's the training, there's the sword fights, there's the espionage and the court intrigue where, you know, you've got these conspiracies against the king, and she's, you know, everybody thinks she's a boy. And so, and then there's like, you know, the magic element where she's got her whole world constructed, and there's different there's good and evil, and there's yeah, so it was very and the, you know, one of the main characters is a horse. So, you know, as a young girl reading, you know, fantasy, for getting started reading fantasy, it was very entertaining and very fun. So that would be definitely one of the main ones that drew me in. As far as like favorites, I love Lord of the Rings and Indiana Jones, and like the Three Musketeers, and Beowulf is actually one of my favorites. There's a lot of King Arthur lore that
I was gonna add. King Arthur is what I thought of next. Like it seems like you like the classic high medieval stuff.
Yes. Yeah. So the Arthur Tales by Mallory, and the Idylls of the King by Tennyson. Beowulf, which is not in the Arthur legend, but is high fantasy. It's and it's Christian fantasy, which it was really cool. The author, who is unknown, writes it from a semi-spiritual perspective, and even though there are monsters and fantastic elements to it, so that one remains one of my favorites, and was definitely an influence on writing. Getting
hard to get bigger than King Arthur and Beowulf.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, cool. It's a lot to inspire to, but no, I mean, those stories have lasted for hundreds of years because they inspire us, and we all want heroes, don't we?
Yeah.
Are there any not just favorites, but ones that either consciously or unconsciously have influenced your writing? Maybe some of those are maybe they're all the ones you just mentioned. Any others you want to throw out there as influences?
Definitely. I'd say those being favorites, I read those later on in my writing journey. So influences, Frank Peretti has to be the first one that I name, because I picked up a book called Monster.
I know of it. Yeah.
It was fairly recent at the time, and I never read any Frank Peretti before, and I really never read anything in his. He's more, you know, he's speculative fiction, but he's on the sci-fi side of it.
Yeah.
And I didn't read a ton of that. And so I picked up this book because it had the red eyes on the front and the big hair, like you can't see any of the face. It just looked mysterious. So I picked it up definitely because of the cover.
Yeah. Hey.
And I was gone. I read like every Frank Peretti book after that. The Visitation being my favorite of his, but his his visual style, the themes that he weaves into his characters, and definitely the way that he weaves in spirituality with his stories and presents those things definitely have influenced the way that I write and view fantasy as like how to present it. So
Yeah, and you kind of realize that not all Christian fiction has to be, you know, Amish romance or Left Behind.
fortunately, he's not in either of those categories.
Yeah. No, I read a little bit of his stuff. He's I think I read more Ted Dekker personally, but yeah, they're both.
Yeah, so Ted
they're-
Decker's similar, right?
Yeah.
He's a little bit more he's not as straightforward. He's not as straight at you. His themes and his plot lines, I think he covers them up a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Kind of.
But
See what you mean.
but yeah, he's definitely an interesting writer and a cool fantasy author.
Okay. Freddie, any other influences you want to name or give a shout out to?
So I mean, I mentioned Beowulf. Sir Walter Scott would be another one. I really appreciate him as a person. But really there's a strain of poetry that actually was a huge influence, and like with Tennyson and King Arthur legends, lots of that is in poetry form. Beowulf is a poem. But Sir Walter Scott is a poet as he writes, if that makes sense. So he has a large book of poetry, or a large catalog of poetry, but he wrote stories, and the way that he wrote them, the word choices, the way he shows pictures, that's definitely influenced the way that I like to, the words that I like to choose, the way I like to present pictures, which is funny because Frank Peretti and Scott are kind of like, they've got their similarities, but they're definitely not the same.
Sure.
And so to see that, to have that balance, or try to emulate, you know, what I appreciate, but kind of cut out. Sir Walter Scott is also very wordy. He's very prosy.
Like Tolkien?
Yes, like Tolkien. Yes. So to kind of weed out a little bit of that, and kind of, you know, target in on those powerful pictures, word pictures. So
do you write poetry, or is it just kind of?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
Many talents. Okay. What are you reading right now? Anything interesting?
Actually, yes, I'm reading Tolkien. I'm reading Baron and Luthien.
Nice.
Which is, have you read that?
We have it. I haven't started yet. I think honestly I was going to read it, and then my wife grabbed it and was reading it, and I was like, oh, I want to get. So I'll get to it sooner or later. But
it's a good one. It's a good one.
I read the most story like in the book of Lost Tales. I haven't read the new.
Okay. Yeah. So it's the history of Middle Earth.
Right.
It comes before Lord of the Rings, and one of the really amazing things to see about it is Tolkien's mind as he's planning but doesn't know yet what's going to happen in Lord of the Rings because he hasn't written it yet. And so you see the transformation from the initial main villain eventually transforming into Sauron and Morgoth and all of those people, and then the heroes in this story, which I don't believe are even mentioned in Lord of the Rings, but their influence on what happens in Lord of the Rings and like the transformation of the tale, because this version I'm reading is actually compiled and edited by Christopher Tolkien, which was Tolkien's son, and that's a touching thing in and of itself, to have his son be his main editor and student, and, you know, so dedicated to his father's work. That's such a huge encouragement as an author, but also it's amazing, like to have that kind of loyalty and put yourself, you know, your own interests maybe under
Didn't
your fathers.
didn't he base Lucy on his wife? I've heard that.
Um,
Or
I've heard that. I haven't actually read it yet, but
the scholars divided on that one. I don't know.
maybe someone knows. But I think it was actually my sister who told me that. She did a lot of reading.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting a mama call.
It's good.
I'm down here.
I have a 2-year-old. I get it. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm looking forward to reading that one. It sounds really cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
I
awesome.
see we have a couple people watching online, so that's great. Keep asking questions in the comments. I mean, this is going great so far. Actually, that brief interruption was a good segue, because I was going to ask you, how do you find the time to write, and what else occupies you during the day? I know you're a mom of, I'm not sure. Yeah, take a minute.
Sorry. Here you go.
Hey, no problem at all.
Are you okay? Okay. Yep.
Hi.
So here's one of the people.
Hi there. Who's this?
This is Eden.
Hi, Eden. How old are you?
I'm not all the way in the screen. How old are you?
Are you
Are you
two?
2.5? 2.5.
2.5. I have a little boy who's 2.5. That's pretty cool. So you're a big girl now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm talking to your mama.
We're having a conversation.
How many kids?
Yeah, so this is what I do during the day.
How many kids do you have?
We got 3.
Okay.
We got 3. Yep, 3
Yeah.
girls.
Wow.
We
Okay.
have Emma.
Yes,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
Ellen and Eden.
What's the age range?
9 to 2.5.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And well, I was going to ask, is there a day job, or I mean, this is your day job? Yeah.
This is the day job.
That's a full-time job. Yeah.
Yep. Raising these people up.
It's at least one full-time job, because I mean, I'm sure you work more than 40 hours in the week. But, yeah. Oh, I mean, and I mean, I've always believed this, but now that I see my wife doing it, I have a greater appreciation. I mean, you know, being a wife and mother is a noble calling for sure. And
for sure.
Mother's Day
Yes.
this weekend, so happy Mother's
One
Day.
of the
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, can you go back up and watch with Ellen, please?
Oh, I don't.
I want you to go do
Bye bye, Eden.
that. She said bye-bye. Yeah, so one of the actually motivations for being disciplined in the writing is having 3 girls. You want to show them how to be productive at home, how to build a home, and the creativity that the Lord has put into that.
Definitely.
And so yeah, one of the motivations for doing any other activity, is just to build into them interests, and interests in honing their skills in whatever the Lord has given them. So
That's awesome. And I'm sure your story teaches them values that you want to pass on and all that stuff. So that's cool. Whenever I've asked anyone, well, I used to ask people like what's the biggest challenge in writing and stuff, and the most common answer I would get is finding the time and/or motivation that goes together, obviously. So I mean, do you write when the kids are asleep, or how does that work?
Mostly.
Yeah.
Mostly. There have been days where they have been playing on the floor for an hour while I am working out a difficult thought. But mostly I try to do it either before they wake up or during their nap time. That seems to work the best.
That's kind of how we do it. Except mine wakes up super early, so I'm like, I can't do that.
Yeah. Well, and when they wake up super early, it's like I found that it's okay to say, okay, rest in your bed for a little bit.
Yeah.
Not time to get up yet. Or even as they're dropping naps, the older one, of course, doesn't nap. So it's just like, this is quiet time. This is reading time. So, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. but you got a lot, to balance. And but I mean, it seems like you're juggling it well. I mean, just from what I can tell. But
Oh, thanks. Thanks. I'm trying.
when you kind of,
There are days where it does not happen, weeks
hey,
in fact, where it does
sure,
not happen. So
we've been in the middle of family life this week ourselves, but
Mhm.
I think, I mean, probably we're moving away from this, but some of us have this conception of like, oh, you know, a published author is like this like, you know, this famous, like great,
like untouchable kind of.
untouchable person. And I mean, I know most of us know that's not true, but maybe when we were younger, that there was that conception. But you're a real human being. You
Yeah, absolutely.
have family. You have, you know, you're a mom. You know, yeah, many of us are published and we're still on the journey. My dad has published 2 novels and he's still working his day job. So
Nice.
yeah,
Very
it's
cool.
just, you know, we're on the journey, but
Yep.
and you know, who knows what the future might hold. But
Mhm.
you know, this success happens in the midst of real daily life.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Thanks for showing
Yeah.
us that side. What do you think is your biggest strength in writing, and or what is one thing that your story does really well?
um Something that I would say, it's hard to say what my biggest strength is or what my stories do very well yet with
Mhm.
having only one out. But from what I can see from this first book, and then just from what I appreciate about my own writing, because there are some things you appreciate and there's some things that you think, nah, that really needs work.
Right.
One of the things that I would say would be my biggest strengths would be showing who the characters are through their dialogue. So you're introducing a character, and the way that they speak really tells who they are.
Mhm.
I would say dialogue is probably one of my strengths. Usually very comfortable writing it,
Mhm.
and it's usually very enjoyable for me to speak through my characters, and so yeah, getting their personalities out through what they say tends to be one of my strengths. I probably can go a little heavy on the dialogue, maybe, but
I do, no. I mean, the characters make or break a story, and I mean, dialogue is part of how you show the character. But
Mhm.
I mean, they've said like, you know, good fiction is character driven and all that stuff. So like, if you, you know, I mean, I haven't read your book yet. I don't know what all goes on in it, but I mean, even if any of the other elements are were like confused or lacking a little bit, like good characters keep the reader invested because that's who we connect with.
You can take a story a long way if you can connect. Yeah, if you can connect with the character.
Absolutely. What's your biggest struggle as far as it comes to the craft of writing or editing? Like, what's the hardest part of the process for your stories?
I think so far the hardest part of the process for me is going too fast.
Okay.
And not keeping track. So when you're writing speculative fiction, you're writing fantasy, you're creating something that's totally, well, you know, as much as you can create something that is totally new to yourself, or um, you know, there's names, there's places, there's languages, um, and keeping track of all of those things as you're writing, as I'm writing, is probably one of the hard things for me, because I like to write in a streamline.
Okay.
I think I a character might pop up in the middle of the story that I didn't initially have there. I'll give him a name and I'll keep moving. And actually I probably should stop and write that guy down and probably give him a character and, like, you know, give him a little description. And so that's probably one of my
So are
the
you
things
more
that
of
I
a
work
pantser
on.
than a plotter?
More of a what?
We talk about pantsers versus plotters. I don't know if you've heard that term, well, plotter is someone who plots it out, and pantser means you go by the seat of your pants, kind of. So
Sometimes.
do you plot things out
Sometimes.
in advance, or do you just kind of write and see where it takes you?
I have been trying to plot things out more. I'm
Okay.
not I don't usually do that. No.
It's not one right or wrong way. I mean, I'm a plotter. That's me. I know
Plotting is excellent. Plotting helps a lot.
many authors, even some famous ones, disagree or have different approaches. But
So Baron and Luthien is a great I don't know, great example of plotting it out as you're writing. And so Tolkien, as he's writing, changes things, but he's already written several versions
Right.
before that. So it's kind of like mini outlines, but they're already in the legend, if that
yeah, that
makes
makes
sense.
sense. I mean,
So
I can start with a broad idea. I don't know every detail. I don't know everything that's going to happen, but a broad outline, and then I just have to figure out how to get from one place to the next.
yep.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, good stuff. Yeah, going too fast, but I think I mean, I'm sure there's been some editing afterward after the first draft, after the first several drafts to make sure it's all cohesive.
Oh,
And,
yes.
yeah, I recently finished that project. That part of the step with my huge monstrosity of it was bigger. I cut it down, but no, I still have to make sure everything's cohesive, and I'm like I'm ready to be done with it. That kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah.
That's an important step, definitely. Mhm. Okay, thanks for sharing. Donna said she has to cut out, but she says thanks for the talk, and she's looking forward to the next book to see what happens to Rose or Errant. So I'll ask you in a minute about future works, but I wanted to ask you also, do you have any writing tips or advice that most people overlook or most people don't know?
Sure. Actually, you mentioned success kind of when we were talking about family life, and actually I keep this but beside my desk. Success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out, and that's from Robert Collier, who's an author. And that keeps me going because I'll look over that and I'll remind myself that success is not what a large portion of the world or culture tells you it is, the money or notice or getting tons of reviews even, or getting, even opportunities. Success is not having a bazillion opportunities to promote your work. Success is, especially for the Christian writer, is being faithful with what the Lord has put in front of you to do in that moment and doing it in an excellent way.
Yeah.
And the Lord will make of it what he will. But if you're being faithful, that's succeeding. And there's kind of a second part to that, because or maybe an alternate tip that kind of stemmed off of that. Tolkien wrote a story, and he was frustrated and he was writing it out. I don't remember the content of the story exactly. I think it had something to do with a tree, but he wrote this, huh?
Was it Leaf by Niggle?
Possibly.
Okay.
Possibly. I can't remember the title. The conclusion that he got from writing this story and being frustrated with it was that we won't ever be able to tell the whole story. We won't ever be able to get the whole picture.
I think that might be the one I mentioned, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but his conclusion from that was profound, because we want our work to be perfect, or the most excellent it can be, and yes, we do. We want it to be excellent, but there's a moment in time where you say, I've done the work, and I've grabbed everything that I can put into this and put it into this, and now it just needs to be delivered to the audience. And so and God will use the imperfections as much as he uses the perfections. So
absolutely. I had to come to that point. I was in what I call editing purgatory for for a couple years at least, and I was like, if I spent 6 more months on this, I'm sure I could fix some things, but I just need to come to a point and cut it off, because I've been dragging my feet on this for too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we may never. I think I've heard another author describe this as the moral of that story. I think it's Tolkien's story, but kind of the idea of like, you know, we may have this grand vision in our mind that we may never get, and what we put out on paper is only a fraction of that, but it's, or like we can never, you know, do exactly all that we intend to because we're imperfect, but we do what we can, and that's and then there's still beauty in that.
Absolutely.
Good. And I like how you mentioned success. I mean, this is a common theme that's come up in other with other authors I talked to as well. But again, you know, an author is not, a published author is not, you know, and it's not someone who's, you know, rich and set for life necessarily. I mean, the 1% maybe, but there's of course there's a few who make it big, but for most of us, it just means you know it's still
Working and continual work.
yes, it's a journey. It's and you know even if your goal is to hit it big and do this full time one day, which I mean I know that's the dream for a lot of us, doesn't happen overnight. It might take, I mean, it often takes, you know, years of work before you get to that point to get big. That's great. That's good things to remember. Tell us about your publishing process. You mentioned a little bit earlier an independent publisher. Did you do self-published or traditional, and how did you navigate that process?
Yeah, so again, I kind of do things too quickly sometimes. I tend to get a little impatient. So I went with an independent publisher called Dorrance.
Okay.
And it was good for that time because again, I was quite busy with other things. And so being able to get the work written and edited and then have them do the cover and the printing and everything was helpful. I was trying to find a medium between, I like having control over my stories, and so I'm sure a lot of people sympathize. So I was looking for something that would allow me, you know, maximum control over the work. And again, I'd never published before. I was just learning about it. So this is me, you know, making first time decisions. So probably not the best decisions and not founded on all of the information.
We all have to start somewhere.
So yeah, exactly. So learning from that experience, I am going to work on strictly self-publishing the next book. And so there won't be that middleman in there, but yeah, so it was more of a learning decision than I would necessarily say something that I would recommend.
Okay. I guess in theory, the appeal of a traditional publisher is they will help you with marketing and such, and they have, you know, in-house people do editing and possibly marketing. Although I know some companies are small and they, you know, and again, unless you hit it big, you're probably going to have to do a good bit. If not,
I wouldn't
the marketing yourself.
I wouldn't put Dorrance in a traditional publisher category. They're kind of that middle of the road. Like they will do the work for you, but they're not paying you upfront for anything. So actually in the future, I would like to try traditional publishing at some point, but we'll see when that happens.
Who knows? Yeah, you got plenty of time to figure it out. We have well now that we touch on this a little bit, what have you done or what are you doing for self-promotion or engaging the audience or building an audience, any of that stuff? I know that's part of the days.
Yeah, self-promotion. So Facebook and Instagram have been a big part of it. Reedsy is a website I've used.
I'm not familiar with that one. What is it?
It's called Reedsy, REEDSY.
Okay.
And it's a reader-writer connection point. It's kind of like Goodreads.
Okay.
If you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
And they have all kinds of resources and things for authors and for readers, and you can review books, and it's not dissimilar from having a Goodreads account where you're suggesting work or you're posting things. And so there's like elements of posting and interacting, and there's also elements of like a blog. But it's a pretty big group of people, I think, that's on there.
Okay.
So
I
that's
love
been interesting to learn about and use. I've got a website, and I do a little newsletter, and I'm not very faithful with the newsletter at this point, but the website itself is therightdab.wordpress.com. And
the
I've been trying to.
WRIT, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
The WRIT DAB DABB.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Trying to direct people toward that the most.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and local events.
Yeah.
Local, like local coffee shops. I live in a place where we have a big town celebration, and so going to the bookstores during that and promoting the book that way, and just walking around and telling people, like visiting different bookstores in the area and saying, hey, would you like to carry my book? So that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Where what area are you in?
I'm in Iowa.
Iowa. Okay. So if
Yeah.
you're
not a writing hub.
if you're in Iowa, if you're local to that area, go check out Emily at your local bookstore. Support your local bookstore. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I know. Again, that's part of the writing game these days. Is putting yourself out there wherever you can, online, locally, and all that stuff. But it seems like you're doing it, and like you said, some days it doesn't happen. Some days you don't see the results right away, but you're doing it, and people are hearing about it, and people are hearing about your book. So that's cool.
Yep.
Where is Errant?
One person at a time.
Sorry, what?
One person at a time.
Yeah, that's how we change the world, right? Where is Errant available? Is it on Amazon? Is it on? For anyone who doesn't live in Iowa, and
yes.
may not yet find it in their local bookstore, on Amazon and your website and all that stuff.
Yep, it's on my website. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. It's
Okay.
anywhere online. Lorehaven. It's on Lorehaven. Yeah.
Okay, so check out Errant in all those places you normally buy books, everyone. Okay, what have you done, or what are you doing? No, sorry, I had that question about already. What do you have in the works currently or for the future? You mentioned, I think you mentioned there's going to be at least one more book, or actually someone, actually Donna in the comments mentioned she was looking forward to the next book, so I assume there's a next book.
There is a next book. Yes.
Great.
Yes.
How's that coming along?
We're in the revision process.
Okay.
So prior to editing, but the main body of the work is done. That could take longer or shorter depending on my map making skills. Going through alpha reader and beta reader groups, we found out that we need a map. So yeah, working on a few technical things with that and revisions.
Fantasy books have maps, right? No.
it needs a map.
I know when I was a kid, I was trying to write an epic like that, and I drew a map of the world, but I'm sure I didn't like make it consistent with story, or I didn't put that much thought into it. Is what I'm saying. That you actually would need to for
yeah, it's a helpful resource when people are traveling and you're trying to remember new names, and yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Is there a target release date for that one?
No release date yet. I was hoping this year, but it's not looking like this year will happen. We'll see.
Okay, maybe next year. Any other projects in the works?
Yes. Yeah. So The Legend of the Gallant Knight is actually a 3-part series, and there is a prequel planned as well.
Okay.
So those are all in the works. The sequel being the closest one. There's
to
also
ask, so what's the sequel called? Or do you know yet?
Vassal.
Vassal. Okay.
Vassal.
Cool.
Yep. In addition to those things, I've got a children's book that is very close to being able to be published. So be looking for that. And it's a verse. It's a children's book that's done in verse, and then I've illustrated it as well. So
Awesome.
I'm excited for that one.
What's that called?
It's called Grandma Takes Care of Me.
Okay.
So it's a cute little book. And along with that, I'm working on a subscription publication called Dancing Mongoose on
Okay.
Substack. And if you subscribe to that, you'll get poetry and illustrations. There's the potential for music to be on there. I'm hoping for it to be a kind of an inspiring read for people who you're wanting just like a little bit of poetry or just a little bit of some short stories or something that you can subscribe to. It'll come right to you, and something you can read aloud to the kids, and enjoy. So
I like the idea already. That's I mean, that's, you know, they say a weekly newsletter or whatever is a great way to keep connected with your audience. So it is in some ways a marketing tool. I mean, it's more than that, hopefully, but it's a good way to give content to people so that when they are looking for a book, they'll be like, hey, wonder what else she's done.
Yeah, so this would be so Dancing Mongoose on Substack would be similar to subscribing to like a serial magazine where you're getting, except it's a single author. So there is the potential to include other authors in it though, eventually once I get it rolling. So we'll see what happens.
How do people find that, or I guess are they able to sign up for it already, or is it still being rolled out?
It's coming soon. I'm targeting June, early June. But you can sign up for it now. And that would be dancingmongoose.substack.com.
Okay, dancingmongoose.substack.com. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, very cool. I'm sure I'm sure that the name Dancing Mongoose has lots to do with it, and I'll
there's some significance there, but
that's fine. Yeah. Okay. And then where can people follow you and your work online? You mentioned your blog, you mentioned Facebook and Instagram.
Yep, so definitely the website. And then Facebook, I think it's Emily Dabb, author artist, on Facebook and Instagram.
Where are you? What's your handle on Instagram?
I think it's Emily Dabb 18.
Okay, cool.
Emily
Dabb 18 on Instagram. I'm looking at your Facebook now. It's Emily Dabb, author/illustrator. So
okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
And the right dab.wordpress.com and dancingmongoose.substack.com.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So go follow Emily in all those places. Any more?
I think that's all for right now. I mean, yep.
Cool. Well, I don't see any more questions in the chat. Anything else you want to say to people, either who may be listening at home or might catch the replay later? Anything else you want to throw out there?
Yeah, just thanks for listening. Thanks for being here, and check out, if you haven't, check out Errant, A Legend of the Gallant Knight, and connect with me over all of those avenues. I'd love to hear from you.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Emily, for coming on today and just sharing with us a little bit about your work and the things you're doing. Thanks to everyone who watched at home and for being part of this. Go check out Emily's stuff, all the places she just mentioned. And also, you can like my page, Samuel N. Harris. Hey, buddy. My little guys over there, too.
Nice.
You can like my page, Samuel N. Harris, for future discussions and content for writers, or you can sign up for my mailing list. I have a link there. When you do sign up, you'll get a free sample of Fractured Heroes, my story that I'm working on, and a few of my favorite scenes that I think you'll enjoy. Of course, go check out Emily's work too and read Errant, The Legend of the Gallant Knight. Thank you for watching today. Thank you, Emily, for being here with us. And
Thanks
you're welcome. It was a good time. Everyone have a great weekend and keep writing.
for
Bye. Thanks, Emily.
See ya.